Cool. Nice to meet everyone. If I haven't met you already, my name's Lauren Feld. I'm our head of growth at Three Box Labs. We have a bunch of our team members here today, which is awesome to see, and then a bunch of our community members. I want to start quickly before we kick things off. The general flow is we have a couple of updates that we want to talk about just around some of the issues we were seeing the last week or two. Want to give an update to everyone and make time and space to answer any questions. And then we have two projects joining, which I'm really excited about. And they're both going to kind of walk us through their use case, what they're working on. And we're going to kind of just have like a pretty open and informal brainstorm where our team will kind of ask questions, provide some insights, and encourage like everyone on the line to just jump in and make it a really collaborative conversation. So first I want to pass it to Stephanie, who's a new member on Three Box Labs. I just want to give her a chance to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Stephanie. I've been in the blockchain space for a while, working in exchange and doing some consulting, working at the bank. And now I'm really excited to be part of Three Box Labs, working on protocol. I've been here for a little over a month, and everything has been really great. I hope to do as much as I can for the team and for the community.
Awesome. Yeah, we're super happy to have you on the team, Stephanie. Cool. I guess let's kick it off, kind of just talking about some of the things that we saw the last couple of weeks. I know we made some updates in the channels around this already, but I'll just pass it to you, Gabe, maybe if you want to start just framing up the intro and giving some context about what we were seeing, and I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thanks. So last week we noticed an issue with many of our nodes going down. You probably noticed some instability and messages from the team. To give a little bit more information about what happened, we noticed that our IPFS nodes were crashing, and we did a number of tests to connect different pieces of our stack, whether it's our Ceramic nodes or IPFS nodes. And we noticed that as soon as the connection between Ceramic and IPFS happened, that after maybe about 8 minutes, the nodes would crash. And after digging into it a bit more, we got to the libp2p messages, which is the communication protocol between the nodes, and saw that there were many repeated identifiers, which is unusual and led to unexpected behavior. Following this, we opened up an issue on the libp2p project, which I could link in chat. And one more thing at the same time, we noticed that there were multiple peers connected with the same ID, which we are not certain, but have a strong feeling that there was some relation to duplicate messages causing a crash. So what is the team doing after? Besides opening that issue and following up the libp2p team, we are improving our monitoring throughout the stack so we can become aware of these issues and detect them sooner so we can avoid downtime and outages. Additionally, we are moving off of JS-IPFS, which has some memory leak issues, to Go IPFS, which will allow us to use memory more efficiently and keep our nodes up longer. Longer term, we have some thinking around how we can scale horizontally and potentially detect some of these issues as or before they're happening. And that's about it. Spencer, Joel, anything to add?
Yeah, just a little bit more sort of context and clarity around some of the things that Gabe said. You know, we've known for a while that JS-IPFS has a memory leak. We have been seeing for a long time in our infra that our IPFS nodes crash periodically with a garbage collection error after they've been up for a long time. And it seems that it's correlated with usage. Like the more the node's being used, the faster it crashes, which makes sense. So basically the issues we were seeing last week is we saw a significant, many orders of magnitude increase in the amount of pub sub message traffic we were seeing. And that amount of usage just drove the memory leak through the roof and caused it just to get caught in this crash cycle. And then why was this big spike of pub sub traffic is the issue that Gabe mentioned, where we were seeing single messages being sent multiple times with duplicate, like every pub sub message has a unique ID. And so each pub sub message should only be sent, once through any given node, but we were seeing the same message being sent and resent throughout the network multiple times. And it created this sort of snowball effect of huge growth. And so we got, many orders of magnitudes increase in pub sub traffic. So it seems to be due to some sort of issue in libp2p, which we never quite got to the exact root cause, but we have a few suspicions that it was related to the duplicate peer ID, or some sort of issue there. But the Protocol Labs team is investigating. But yeah, like Gabe said, the real mitigation is to move away from JSIPFS onto GoIPFS, which is a lot more stable, and has a lot more usage in the community. And in the meantime, we've put in a bunch of extra like monitoring and alerting to help us detect if something like this were to happen again, we could respond faster.
So is it still happening, or is short-term mitigation in place?
No, it went away after about 6 hours. After about 6 hours of being in this sort of mode where we were seeing literally tens of thousands of pub sub messages in a minute, it just stopped. Our hunch, we didn't quite correlate this with the logs. Our hunch is that all the pub sub nodes on the network crashed at the same time. So the messages that kept getting bounced around, like, all got shut out. And so when they all came back online, we no longer had those like problematic messages that were stuck in this cycle. That's our hunch, but we haven't 100% confirmed it as to like why it stopped when it did.
Oh, man.
It hasn't happened since. It's been over a week now.
Yeah, I guess so. Some of these, or like this type of issue, we suspect can have partly to do with that the JavaScript version of libp2p and IPFS is like less stable. And good news in regards to that is that GoIPFS made a release around midnight my time yesterday that supports DICOSE, which is like a envelope or signature signed and encrypted data, which is like the main piece why we haven't been able to use GoIPFS with Ceramic before. So now that that's released, we hope to have like much more stable kind of infrastructure for running Ceramic.
Yeah, basically the whole team right now is focused on the migration from JSIPFS to GoIPFS and getting all the prerequisites squared away, upgraded to the newest libraries for like the IPFS HTTP client and things, so that we can work with the new version of GoIPFS. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we'll start testing on Clay some nodes with running GoIPFS, and then within a month be cut over on the mainnet network fully over to GoIPFS.
Cool. Before we get to the anchoring service, I want to just pause and see any questions from anyone on the line, or any comments, anything to add. Okay, cool. Spencer, you want to talk a little bit about the Ceramic anchoring service one we saw last week?
Yeah, so we had a very exciting week last week. We had one of these it rains it pours kind of weeks. So completely unrelated to the IPFS crashes that were happening last week, we discovered another production issue at the same time, which was we realized that we had not done an anchor on mainnet in almost 2 weeks. And so there were a few different sort of factors that led to that. So the original issue was that we had the anchor service, which periodically batches up requests across multiple streams into a Merkle tree and anchors that on Ceramic, which is an important part of the Ceramic consensus system. One of the anchor processes had hung and was sort of still up and still running, but not making progress, and sort of sat there for 2 weeks, sort of up, but not actually doing anything. And that seems to be because there was a request that took a really long time to run on its Ceramic node, possibly because, so it's possible that actually the trigger for this, I hadn't actually thought about this before. Well, no, the timing doesn't quite line up. Anyway, we had a request that took too long to run. And basically when it did finish, the HTTP connection had gone down. So the node never made any more progress. So one thing we did was add timeouts in a bunch of places that were missing, and including to all of our HTTP requests, so that now if something does happen like that, it'll just fail rather than hang. The other problem was that once we had this hung process that we didn't notice that, anchors weren't progressing. So we've done a bunch of overhauling of our monitoring and alerting so that we will now get notified if something like this happens again, and if there's not progress being made. So then basically what I've been working on for the last week is, we fixed the issue that caused it to happen originally. But in the meantime, we had a 2 weeks long backlog of anchor requests that had not been processed. So we have been working on getting through that backlog. And it's important to process the anchor requests in the order they come in. So because there can be dependencies between anchors across streams. That's one of the big advantages of the anchor is they give you a timestamp for when operations happened. So if you do something like revoke a key on a 3ID, like a signature key, if you revoke it, then the only way you know that the signatures that were performed by the old key that's now been revoked are valid is because you know that they were valid at that time in the past. You know when the key was revoked, you know when the signature was done. So like, okay, even though this key is revoked from my 3ID now, it was valid at the time that it did the signature. And all of that depends on getting the timestamps from the anchoring process. So we've been trying to work through the anchoring process. And as part of that work, we've discovered just a bunch of like little small various like bugs or things that could lead to some anchors to fail, even though they really should have succeeded. The most common is when you have a lot of anchors on a single stream that come in the same batch. When we try to load those streams, it can wind up timing out and causing that request to fail. We were also doing a lot of things in parallel before to try to keep the anchor moving quickly. So we were like loading a whole lot of streams in parallel, but doing that put a bunch of load on the node, which could cause some of those requests to time out and then cause anchors to fail unnecessarily. So we're doing a lot less in parallel, giving a lot more dedicated resources to the anchoring process to really try to prioritize anchors being successful. The downside is that doing less things in parallel means it moves slower. So getting through the backlog has taken a while. We have a job that's kind of running in the background, going through processing anchors, but it's slow going. So at this point, I think we've gone through about 10,000 requests in the backlog, but we've got, I think, like another 20 or 30,000 to get through. So that'll be running sort of over the weekend as we continue to catch up to steady state.
How would it look like when for a developer using the system if we're affected by that?
So, I mean, the most obvious thing is that you'll see a bunch of streams are not anchored, even though they were created a long time ago. That's mostly harmless unless you're doing key revocation, specifically on a 3ID. So like that's the real dangerous place is if you're revoking keys. Adding keys is fine, but if you're revoking signature and authentication keys from a 3ID and there are anchors that have failed, that's when you can get into some sort of trouble where it can start thinking that signatures were invalid, and you might get like a error loading a stream that like the signature was done with a revoked key. But that would only be the case for now. Like as long as the streams are just unanchored, it's fine. Like we're continuing to work through the backlog, it's fine. It's really only if you have anchors that actively failed. And there's always some percentage of anchors in any given batch that do fail from some, like, especially on these really large streams with lots of anchors, with lots of commits. But we're doing, we're investing a lot in increasing the stability of this system and making anchors, be a lot more likely to succeed.
I just want to add that the monitoring and alerting improvements that we need to do for the previous issue also apply here as well. And it's a main focus of the team across the board.
Yeah, the whole team basically is focused on stability right now, and that comes in a few forms. That is like monitoring, alerting. So we detect instability. It's moving to Go IPFS, which we have reason to believe will be a lot more stable than JS IPFS. And it's like a bunch of little improvements towards various parts of the anchoring process and things to increase general stability of the whole system. So new feature development has mostly paused at the moment as we're really trying to increase the stability and robustness of the existing system.
Forgive my ignorance, but you talk about anchoring. I think of the word pinning. Can you clarify the difference between those?
Yeah, they are different concepts. So pinning is about making sure that the data remains available. So when you create a stream, there's sort of two pieces of data that make up the stream. There's the commit log, which is all of the commits that live on IPFS. And then there's the stream state, which keeps track of like the current tip, the most recent commit in the log. And so the stream state with the current tip is stored on the Ceramic node itself. The content of the commits are stored on IPFS. Both of that data needs to be pinned, or else it can be lost on node restart or on like garbage collection. There's like a fixed size cache of things that are kept in memory, but if it's not pinned, it won't be persisted. So if you want any streams to persist, you have to pin them. We're actually about to make a change to enable pinning by default. So when you create a new stream, it will be pinned by default. Right now, it is not. That was because there was a bunch of performance issues with pin streams in the past, but we finished a project recently that was actually one of Stephanie's first new projects when she came onto the team, which dramatically improved the performance of pin streams. So now the performance overhead for having a stream be pinned is pretty low. So we're going to switch to pinning by default. So that's important for just data availability. Then anchoring is different. Anchoring is about there's a few different pieces. Part of it is like, putting every update that happens, a sort of attestation of that update on Ethereum gives you a kind of tamper-proof record. But I think the most important thing for our usage is the timestamp that you get. Is that when you do an update, you then put that update on Ethereum, you get the block timestamp from Ethereum, which like there are controls in Ethereum to prevent the timestamp from drifting too far from real world timestamps. So you of course can't just trust the node's system clock, because that could drift or be anything or set to the future or past. So by using the timestamps from Ethereum, we can actually have a reliable timestamp that we can use to order events across streams, which is an important part of the consensus system. It's how if there are conflicting branches of history, we pick the one that was anchored earlier. And it's also important for like these key replication scenarios that we talked about before.
Very nice. Thank you.
Awesome. Unless there's any other burning questions, thanks Spencer and Gabe and everyone on the team who also was helping with all these issues over the last week. I want to turn over to the projects. I think that's going to be really exciting, and I want to have time to really dig into them. I think we have Jamie on the line. Jamie's from the Discovery Project. Mute. So Jamie, yeah, if you're on, feel free to come off of mute and turn on your video. Sorry.
Mr. Aboda, can you please mute?
There we go. Okay. So yeah, Jamie, if you're on, if you want to come on and talk, maybe just spend like a minute about what you're working on with Discovery and with dCompass. And then if you want, I know you had sent over some ideas and some questions that I've also kind of outlined, but I'll leave it to you to kind of just kick off where you want to take the conversation.
Sure. Sounds great. Thanks, Lauren. And just want to thank you and some of the team for all the help you've given me in the DMs and on Discord. I'm not sure what his actual name is, but UKSTV has also been very helpful. Yeah, thanks again. I do have a little slide that maybe helps out because the flow is a little complicated. I'll share that in a minute. I'll share the screen. But as far as the background, I'm with a project called, Decompass. I actually have a teammate, Callie Huxwell, who I think is on the call as well. And we've used ceramic in, kind of in the hackathon, and we have a minimum viable product or proof that we're trying to do, and we utilize ceramic a lot, and we're trying to use it for what we have in mind. We're an educational platform, Web3 educational platform, so we're trying to be like I guess the way to think of it is sort of like a lynda.com or some type of attestation or badging system that can be verifiable, but also dynamic. So we're trying to figure out how to do that without obviously the naive approach of, doing an NFT and then proxying an NFT or reprinting an NFT every time you have an update. That's not, especially if you're on mainnet or any type of expensive gas net, that's going to be just infeasible. So we're using ceramic and just trying to think of some good ideas using IPFS to keep it decentralized, keep it dynamic, and but just have a good user experience as well. So getting that triangle figured out is kind of where we're at. So all right, so I guess you just want me to share my screen at this point? Is that?
Yeah, sure. If you want to be on, and we'll kind of like talk in our whole team and everyone else that's on the line, like feel free to jump in with questions. We'll ask like probing questions. We can try to give our thoughts on what you see. And I think like my general reaction, I mean, I know you guys are familiar with what you're doing, but it's kind of like very similar to like what Figment Learn is doing. And like also adding in maybe like the credential piece. So like a little bit of like a rabbit hole element.
Right.
Sounds really cool.
Yep. That's a good idea. In fact, we've talked with people from Figment and Rabbit Hole as well. Yep. So very, very similar, but trying to decentralize it and open source it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I'll go ahead and share, and we'll see. Okay. All right. So can you see the little Figma slide there? Is that what's on everybody's screen there?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so as mentioned, what we're trying to do, at least the flow we have currently, is we've got some smart contracts for this DAO. So we're trying to fully decentralize it. So you'll start with a DAO, and with this DAO, different projects that will eventually control. For now, they'll control and write their own streams. They will come and add a project. User created, we'll have a signaling process. We can signal these different projects. So anyway, the stream ID for now would be mapped and kept in the contract. But other than that, all the updates and everything the project would want to track would be in a ceramic stream controlled by them. And I think I talked about maybe eventually be nice with write access and to keep it kind of like a multi-sig type thing to have a safety ID, but that detail is not super relevant, but they would have a stream that they can write to. So project 1, project 2, and of course this could get rather large. You could have lots of different Web3 projects that add courses, add quests, add badging, whatever it is they want to do. Even projects could have sub-projects. So I just have 3 projects here. And then that's from the producer side. And then from the consumer side, from the person who's actually trying to complete these courses, earn these badges so that they can put it on their skills badge or put it on their profile, resume, CV, whatever you want to think about. What we have right now is essentially an ERC 721. So there is a badge standard ERC, I think 1238 or something like that, but that's not compatible with a subgraph for an NFT DID stream. So what we're going to do is essentially have a non-transferable. So I'll lock the transfer function in the NFT, and we'll have a 721. The process is a little bit, there's a lag with the subgraph when you mint. So there's kind of a mint and claim process right now. Obviously, we're open to suggestions or things that would make that cleaner, but you would essentially kind of mint a dynamic skills badge from another contract we have. You would only do that once, and then it will be a dynamic skills badge, so you won't have to mint over and over again. At least that's the current plan. As I said, no proxy system where you're having these upgradable proxies or no multiple like lazy minting where you're minting and then 6 months later minting again, 6 months later minting again as you update. So the subgraph catches up, and essentially the badge would then be updated on the claim to store, address, DID mapping, and it would also store the stream ID of this NFT DID once the subgraph catches up. So essentially, you could go to the contract and see the user and the stream ID. So what would happen for the user? So the dynamic part is going to be the stream that's controlled by the owner will be able, how we have it now, is they can essentially put an array of stream IDs that they want people to be able to easily access. So let's say I have project 2, project 3, and project 5. I want to share my, I want to share what I've done on those projects. But project 1, project 4, I don't want to share that, and the rest of the projects I haven't done. So I could add in to what I control here, this stream, I would be able to maybe put the stream IDs and possibly even, for the UI, you could even put certain keys to where even within the stream ID, you would only be able to make certain queries or easily or whatever. But let's say just for ease of use, you put stream IDs here. And then I put project 2 stream ID and project 3 stream ID, then that makes it really easy for a UI to go in and iterate over this array of stream IDs, would be able to get the data for this user from these public streams, and then would be able to, on the UI, be able to actually present to, say, a company that wanted to verify this person's CV. They'd be able to now be presented with an updated dynamic badge. So way that would do, you can see it here, but kind of the thought process we have is a user, address DID is mapped with the token ID from this badge contract. The token ID will either be in the IPFS metadata or within the contract itself. You'll be able to easily read and get the NFT DID public stream. You iterate over those. So now you have the stream IDs that want to be public. You can check with the contract getter if you wanted the project IDs for those. And then you would essentially loop over those streams, querying for the public data, possibly with the keys that were also stored in here. And then on the front end, you can do with it whatever you want to present to your user. So what are some issues that come up with this? Well, one obvious one is the way I've got it here. If this data is unencrypted in public, then even though this, if I know this user DID, in principle, of course, I could go to any project, anybody could go to any project and see all their data, right? Not just the data they wanted to share. So I think I'd talked to you, Lauren, about possible encryption, or we had thought about I think y'all have a JWE DAG standard, possibly, where this user could like if this was encrypted data, but doing that easily I haven't really thought of. So there are some privacy concerns with this flow for sure that I have. So I'd love to hear any ideas the team or community has about that. Also another flow that was that we
Jamie, maybe I'm just going to pop in. Maybe let's start there, because you just gave us a ton of information. And so
sorry.
in there, no, it's great. It's good to get all of that feedback. But I think it'll be good to kind of let's start there, and then we'll have a conversation and to the next piece. Yeah, I mean, I have a bunch of questions. So the other team members online, are there any like initial thoughts or questions you guys want to ask before I maybe? Okay, I mean,
yeah, can you just like go through again quickly, like what are the various like lookup paths? It's like you have a user, you want to find all of the skills for that user, or it's you have a project, you want to find all the users for that product. Like what are the different like sort of access paths to look up data, and like how does it flow?
Right. What I'm mainly focused on now is more from the perspective of the user flow going to all their projects, not necessarily like filtering by projects right now, even though eventually that would be nice to be able to do. This flow is more thinking of entering. How you would enter would be You would want to verify that this person who claims that they are experts and have badges from 20 different projects, you want to be able to actually go and verify with those 20 projects that, you know, yes, you did get this badge, or yes, you did get this score, or whatever it is, because the projects could, of course, be, you know, I mean, it's simple to think in terms of like pass fail, but obviously they would have a whole bunch of data there that maybe you'd want to see, depending on how complex the badging process is and whatever you have. So that's more what I'm sort of focused on now, but eventually there would be, you know, possibly like saying, okay, filter by projects, and as you mentioned, having different injury points. But the main one I'm focused on will be more from the user side. So I want to think of you as somebody who wants to verify this guy's CV, and he claims that he's got these badges or attestations. You would just want to verify that.
Got it. So if you want to look, so like, I don't see any like, how do you go from, so you have a user's address or DID, and now you want to look up their claims.
Right. So if you come to like say the front end, what you would have is if we have an address, right? So the address in the contract will be linked to a, you know, token ID, right? You'd be able to get the token ID, just essentially like think of it like the owner of, right? Or we'd have a mapping there. So once you
where do you get, how do you get that? Is that in the user's IDX or like did data store?
We will be keeping all that in the user's IDX. Yeah, there will be a stream there. But actually, you could even have, if you're just talking about like, I know the user's address or DID. How would I find the NFT that the token ID is associated with them? Is that all you're asking? Yeah. I mean, we actually were going to just have like a quick mapping even of that. Actually stored on the contract as a public getter.
So there's a well-known contract address that lists all of the skills tokens that have been given out per DID.
For dCompass, it was for our UI. Yeah, we'll know the address. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I wonder if that, like, you might, like, if that mapping of user ID to skills badge might better live in the user's data store, their IDX, just because then you don't have to maintain that data on chain, which will be more expensive. But I mean, it could go either way.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, that would be fine. The only thing is that you know, then at that point, like, so yeah, so the user's IDX, yeah, I'll have to think about that, because I was just thinking of having just the entry point being really public, to where even in principle somebody wouldn't have to go through our UI to verify or go to their user IDX to verify. They would just be able to go to this contract and grab it. But okay, you're right. I mean, that does store it on chain, which makes it a little more expensive.
Okay, so then you go to the contract, you get the token address, and then what's the next step? Where does Ceramic come into play?
So where Ceramic comes into play is the token ID will be also mapped, and this is where I actually was going to store that in the IPFS metadata for the token URI, because it's a two-step process. But so you could keep that off chain in the like custom properties of the metadata standard, because it is in ERC 721. But if you want to think of it as being easy, it's just one more piece of data, you could map the token ID to this NFT DID on chain as well. But either way, you would be able to, either from the token URI getter and reading in the metadata and seeing the NFT DID stream there, or actually, let's say for ease of use, that you have a mapping there as well that maps token ID to DID, you would be able to get the NFT DID, and that's going to be publicly available. There'd be a publicly available endpoint, plus of course our UI. I think from our UI, we'd be able to check that. And then that's going to be an array of stream IDs, essentially, that the user, because the user controls write access to this. So they can put only the ones, I was thinking they could put only the, you know, stream IDs, and possibly even within each stream ID for the project, within each stream here, there could be like multiple queries or whatever the schemas are. They could even put in what they want public and not put in what they don't want public. That was kind of the idea I had, but I don't know if that's good, bad, whatever. But yeah, then once you have that, then these would also be public streams. So then once I have these stream IDs, I could then go here and make the queries I need relating to this user DID.
Okay. Yeah. The one thing that just sort of like first jumps out at me when I look at this is when I see these like array of blank, or like, you know, this either in the triangle on the right or the rectangle on the bottom left, these like lists of things that grow over time. This is something that unfortunately Ceramic struggles with right now, is streams that have lots of updates. So if this is going to have, you know, hundreds or thousands of updates over time, as it just constantly gets updated and new things get added, that's going to cause performance and stability issues with those streams. Right now we have plans for improvements to, you know, either creating new stream types or potentially improvements to tile document stream type to handle that situation better. There's no like intrinsic reason why Ceramic needs to necessarily be bad at that. But some parts of the design right now, in terms of, because we keep the full history of every single update to a stream, that makes the cost of streams as they get updated grow. So that's just something to keep in mind. Like if there are places where you can sort of shard these streams out into multiple streams or group them more by sort of, that's kind of why I was asking about, like, you know, instead of doing an index in a Ceramic stream, can you just tie the data to a user's DID and put it in their IDX? That can be like a strategy to avoid having these like really large lists of every stream on the, you know, in the entire application or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. Also, like on that point, I was going to ask, like, is there even a need to tie directly to the stream ID? Like, what's the kind of business rationale for that? Like, is the idea, I'm assuming it's to say, like, I'm an author, right, of this project, or I'm a contributor. But if I have like an NFT that's issued, I don't know like when that happens, or maybe I'm confusing the NFT is just for like a skills badge. But I'm wondering if like there's a way that just having like linking or having ownership over the NFT serves as like a proof that's sufficient alone.
Yeah, so the NFT is just kind of obviously that's from the user side. So they control that DID, and they also have the kind of like on-chain proof that, you know, it's just going to be their dynamic skills and used to write their stream for the NFT. The projects, though, those streams are so that this person just can't make any other claim that, you know, they can technically write anything, right, that I've you know, scored 100% and you know, I'm the CEO of Microsoft or whatever. You know, they can make all kinds of crazy stuff. So these projects, if that's what you're asking, these aren't NFTs. These would just be you know, streams, but they're streams that the project controls. We have thought about kind of a signing mechanism somehow, like from the projects as well. I think I mentioned as well to you, Lauren, I can't remember now. I've had multiple conversations and thoughts, but some type of like batching process of this and then signing, and, you know, but then I just didn't really know how to do it is the problem. But yeah, so the only one who really has the NFT is for the user. And yeah, that's great. It does prove that user and allows them to have control. More important for privacy as well. Like they get right control over that stream. But every other project, though, I want to have it to be able to be verified and signed that it's the controllers of that project that are actually attesting to that data. If that makes sense. I don't know if I answered your question or not.
Yeah, I think I'm following, and I'm not sure if I'm still missing something, but I guess it would make sense to me. I don't know if that you necessarily need to have like an array of the stream IDs that the NFT is claiming. If you could just have a badge that says, I completed that project, I completed that course, right? Like, I guess that's, unless there's like a reason to say, I want to link it. Like, I guess one challenge I could see is if like those projects are dynamic and the courses are changing over time, maybe you want to have some way to actually be able to say, like, I took and passed this course at a certain point in time when like this was the content in it.
Right.
So I guess just to Spencer's point before about like having long lists of things, I guess like if you were to move away from the stream, actually like pointing to the streams and just storing the NFTs, I don't know if that actually does like change much by way of performance, but.
Oh, I see what you're asking. Yeah, there's actually only one NFT, the original NFT. So the updates are not NFT. You're not going to mint. At least that's kind of what we're trying to avoid. Like, so you could do like clones or proxies and try to do like cheap minting every so often when the user wanted to update. but the actual NFT is just kind of for control of that stream, and there's 1 mint and that's it. So I was trying to avoid having to do like every time you complete a project, or every 3 weeks when you update, you have to go back on chain, remint a new NFT, or mint an NFT for every project. I was trying to avoid that. I want like one badge NFT, and then the rest is like, that badge is, you know, quote unquote dynamic, in the sense that what it points to will have updated information, but you're not having to go on chain and keep reminting NFTs. So there's going to be 1 mint, the original mint by the user, that just says, this is my badge, and it's going to be pretty blank at first. And then as they accomplish more stuff on the dCompass site, I want the information that was within that badge to then be up, you know, they can basically update the stream so that it points to the updated data.
Got it. Okay. So if I'm understanding correctly, then you're basically using the NFT as like the user ID, right? Like it's like every user has an NFT, and then they're actually storing and pointing to all the courses that the NFT like owns that they've taken.
Right. And to be on chain, and if somebody wants to show their badge easily on OpenSea or whatever, I don't know how important that'll be, but yeah, the NFT itself is actually not that important. And that's where I think Spencer was saying, like, hey, maybe you could even just replace this with an IDX stream or whatever. Because I am essentially using that as like, so the NFT is a single mint. It is on chain. It probably would be cheaper, and maybe we'll do that. But we were also thinking of, you know, just kind of how some people like to, you know, have something to display or have something on chain, you know, as proof or whatever. But it would only be a single mint, not a repeatable mint, and it is kind of serving as an ID.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. I was missing that before. Sorry if I was.
Yeah, no worries.
Because I think like, well, we've seen a lot of other use cases is people using NFTs to issue them as kind of like the skilled badge or credential. But that makes a lot of sense.
That gets expensive really fast.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Totally.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I feel like we could be talking about this for like a full hour, and I don't want to cut you off. So I guess some ideas. We do have one other person that joined, and we only have 15 minutes left. And I want to make sure we time to also chat with him. But I would say, I think we have an office hours. We're starting to do them every week. So I would say, let's definitely, I would encourage you to go there, and we'll also be there as a team. We can continue the conversation. And I would also just post questions. Like I know we were posting them directly in our Ceramic Discord where our engineering team is. They can answer like more technical questions around some of the things that we went into around like the encryption and public versus private data and different streams. So I would say definitely like, let's continue the conversation. I don't want to stifle it, but I also want to make sure we get to Arnab.
Yep, understood. Yeah, I went a little longer than I thought. I'm sorry about that. So yep, thank you team. And I will be at the office hours.
Awesome. Okay, Arnab, I want to turn it to you for the last 13 minutes. If you want to just, again, come off mute and present a little on what you're working on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Lauren. Appreciate you inviting. So yeah, I'll just give you a quick brief. I know we have just like 10 minutes left. So I'll give you a quick brief. Trying to essentially make an accounting software, helping users aggregate all the cross-chain data, convert that into USD, essentially also making sure that, you know, it's included on and off-chain data like balance sheet, charts, graphs, all that stuff. But essentially figuring out how I can use Ceramic to do the same, merely because the current problem is we're calling all these APIs from Etherscan, from other chains, and putting different essentially wallet addresses, but it will shut the like entire server down merely because there's so many API calls. We try to do like cron job and all that, but there's like so many updates that happen if the transactions are happening on a really regular basis. So yeah, we're just trying to figure out how we can essentially include, use basically Ceramic for the same.
Cool. I'm happy to jump in. Any other folks on the team want to also jump in? I don't want to keep monopolizing the whole combo. Okay, cool. I mean, one thing I can share, I know we talked about this a little bit, Arnab, but I guess, are you familiar with like the concept of DIDs? Because I felt like when we started talking about them in our chat, it felt like maybe it was newer, and it might be helpful to talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah, I'd actually love to hear more. I did read the documentation, but I'd love to hear it from the team.
Cool. Yeah, Danny, where are you trying to go? Or I also know, Gabe, you're the DID expert and you're in all the channels. If you guys want to take it, I'm also happy to just give a quick overview. All right.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
If Gabe's there, I'll let him go. My internet's cutting in and out, so if I take it, you'll probably only get half of what I say anyway.
Go for it, Danny. I'll fill another half.
Okay, cool. So yeah, Arnav, I'm not sure what you guys already talked about, but the basic idea is creating a persistent and durable identifier that's an abstraction away from single key pairs or accounts. And that gives you a bunch of benefits. It, first of all, like gives you more resilience than you can get with a single key pair. So users are likely to almost inevitably going to have many different keys and accounts across multiple different wallets and multiple different blockchains, some of which will be short-lived, some of which will be enduring. And so if you think about building an application and wanting to serve users over time, and in a consistent way, relying on a key pair as your user model is pretty fragile. It's very likely that won't hold up for very long. And so having something that even as keys rotate and change and are added, still is a persistent identifier, gives you the ability to build experiences that endure over time. And it also creates the ability to do cross-chain experiences. So if you're an app or a series of apps that are supposed to work together that are using different blockchains or other technologies that are that use crypto, you don't want to have a different identity model for each different piece of that application, each different feature. So you need something that brings them together. And so DIDs are, again, like this unifying identity. It also gives you optionality around privacy and security, in particular for privacy. If you are starting to build around a single key pair, that means you're forcing users to like do everything with that single key pair if you want to be able to like have some unification of the different information and data. And so DIDs give you this flexibility to have different key pairs for different applications, for holding different assets, for operating in different contexts, for signing messages on a blockchain where you have a lot of these financial assets. And so you may want to protect privacy or non-anonymity in some cases. But at the end of the day, you might also want to be able to bring some of that information together, at least on the user's end, if not publicly. And so DIDs are, again, a way, if you can link multiple key pairs to the one DID, you have this identity system that is robust across them. And so Ceramic uses these DIDs as the basically core authentication and authorship over any data that's stored in around Ceramic. And so you have this persistent like data identity that's what's actually writing streams on Ceramic. So that can be data directly, it can be the data store, which is keeping track of where data is. And by doing that with a DID instead of a key pair, you're ensuring all that data remains persistent across any chain, any time period, and usable in any of these different contexts instead of fragmenting it by key or blockchain or wallet. So that's the core idea. Gabe, feel free to jump in with anything else that I missed there.
No, you're good. Do you have any questions, or what do you think?
No, honestly, sounds pretty much straightforward. If I do have any questions, I was wondering the office hour thing that Lauren just brought up. When do those happen? I can just get in touch with the team and stuff.
I think, yeah, those are scheduled for every 2 weeks, same time as this. So they'd be 1 week from now. And then, yeah, of course, we're always in Discord as well.
Actually,
awesome. Appreciate it.
We're going to be moving to a weekly office hours, and we might be starting that next week, I think. So yeah, we'll update. Just if you add the Ceramic community calendar, which is like a Google Cal, you can add overlay over yours that has all of our office hours and community calls in it. So we have to update that. We haven't scheduled for next week yet, but I'll ping you also directly around the end of the time.
Awesome. Thanks. Appreciate it.
And anything other like do you want to chat? We do have a couple more minutes, Arnav. Like, do you want to go a little bit deeper of, hopefully that helps to clarify kind of like DIDs and how I think that helps with one element of the solution, like the user identity and linking multiple accounts so you can see that persistent. If you're obviously doing user accounting, you want that persistent view across different wallets and chains. But then there's also the element, it sounds like more using Ceramic for like a decentralized data store or some of the other info. Do you want to just like chat about anything else or?
Yeah, definitely. I do want to get rid of the backend. Essentially, I don't know how I can essentially use Ceramic for that, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. For now, the focus was to do cross-chain data, basically ramp out the first feature. So we have like an MVP, working MVP. But of course, like moving forward, we'll get rid of the backend. But yeah, any thoughts on that? I'll note that down as well.
What data are you storing on the back end right now?
Just graphs, off-chain data, like, graphs centric to this particular user, balance sheets and all that stuff. So if you essentially go and you have all the different transactions in different wallets, you have this one central place where you can have all the balance sheets that converts your assets into USD and then rips out a balance sheet for you, all the dots, like charts and all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of that can be stored on Ceramic long-term. My guess is without understanding how that's happening right now, it probably doesn't make sense to migrate most of it immediately, because you need access to that data on the application side to kind of compute what the balance sheet is from the raw data. And so both the frequency of like needing the access to it and then the frequency with which you're writing new data might be a little bit much for the stream types and what Ceramic's like really optimized for right now. But anyone else on this call who has more knowledge on the tech side than me can feel free to jump in or add anything there if you disagree.
Yeah, I guess for the use case, like you do want that in real time, but I'm guessing like in terms of storing the data, like, are you trying to think of like a caching layer or is it like you're storing historical data?
It will be actually both moving forward.
Yeah, so I definitely think it's possible to use Ceramic in that way. For the first thing that you mentioned, though, the API calls, I don't think Ceramic per se can reduce the amount of like calls that you need to make to other chains. But of course, like for the caching aspect, then that should make things a lot easier and take a little bit of the weight off of that. But yeah, I think probably during in office hours or just on Discord, like we can go over what the schemas and data models might look like. That would be appropriate for that type of data set. I don't know if others have thoughts on specifically on data in terms of like balances over time and how we might model that.
So Arnav mentioned getting rid of a centralized backend. Is it realistic to think of Ceramic as a main data store and getting rid of a centralized SQL database or NoSQL database? Or is it best to think that Ceramic would actually archive and be kind of a source of truth for that data?
I'd say maybe somewhere in between. Like you can think of Ceramic as like the primary thing it's like really good at is storing data with the user. So basically, like you have some data that's being generated when in the application by the person that's using the application, and to store that along in like a data store that's like related to that user. And so if you just want to kind of like retrieve data about any specific user, that's really simple. You can use it kind of like as a database. If you want to do queries over like multiple users, then that's not as easy. If you know all the users, you can make a query about all of those users. that might be a little bit expensive. So in that case, you might want to have like some indexing layers. And there are some projects that are doing this on top of Ceramic. And then they're kind of using Ceramic as a source of truth for the data, and then doing like an index on top for the query across multiple users. But yeah, if it's only one user, you can use the query data directly from Ceramic.
Cool. Arnav, I know we have 1 minute left. Anything else that's pressing? Was this helpful? And is it something where you want to go a little bit deeper, I guess, in terms of like ideation with our team, or did you want to just hoping to get some of those initial questions answered?
Actually, I would love to actually go in depth with like ideation and stuff, but we're over time, so I'll definitely keep it to the next section.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Well, think about it. Definitely. I'll reach out to both of you guys directly, and we'll also just update the community calendar we decide about next week. But maybe we're continuing to experiment on these like community calls and trying new things. So maybe there's like a world in which we just do like 2 breakout sessions next time, like spend the full hour on each project and just go a lot deeper, and we'll split the team, and that way we have full time and we don't feel like we're running up against the clock. If that works. So I'll reach out to you. We'll follow up. We'll make a plan for next week, but we'll make sure we check in on you. Cool. Anything else from the team that anyone wants to mention or just chat about? Otherwise, I guess we can wrap up.